Hey there, I'm Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button like you're Brandon Davies. You have consent, and if you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, please, pretty please, go ahead and knock that out while you're here. Today, I'm excited to tell you, we're continuing our conference previews for the 2022-23 college basketball season. We started with the American. Now we're focusing on the ACC, where North Carolina is the favorite after making the title game of the 2022 NCAA tournament. Deadleg, no argument from you, I assume. North Carolina, clear favorite in the ACC?
Clear favorite in the ACC, and that's a top two storyline. In fact, we're going to almost certainly, if the schedules do allow, we are going to do the remainder of our conference previews after this week's live on YouTube. We had a scheduling crunch this week that's actually prohibiting it. So full transparency for our viewers and listeners, we are actually pre-taping this. Our own Ncaa Edwards will be at ACC Media Day. Nada, I believe the day this ACC preview is running. Do I have that right here? We're taping on Tuesday. Is this going to go up on Wednesday, my man?
Yes, this is actually going up when I'm supposed to be there and talking to Armando Baycott and others.
How dare you not say Leaky Black?
Others.
How dare you? How dare you? Now say hi to Leaky for us. So anyway, I say that to say we're going this alphabetically as it goes down, and the way the calendar came, it's just it's a bit of a bummer that we are doing this literally the day before ACC Media Day. But I'm going to go ahead and lean on the likelihood that there's not going to be anything that comes out of ACC Media Day that's going to be relevant enough to have mentioned on this podcast. But yes, UNC, the favorites. Here are my storylines going into the year. I would actually say Jon Scheyer taking over in Durham is storyline number one. How does it go? He has the best freshman class in the country. New vibes in Durham. Krzyzewski will still be around. I'll ask you right now. I had this for when we got to Duke, but real quick, over under just for fun, because Kay said he's not going to be going to every game. So I put the over-under Mike Krzyzewski in Cameron Indoor for a Duke home game at 4.5 games. Over or under, GP?
Over.
I'm going to go under. I'll take him for his word. I'll say he's not around a ton, but you'll say over. Okay. Keep it
Roy Williams was at least 5 games for every team in the country last season.
Kay ain't Roy, though. I think he's going to intentionally go. I think he's going to zag. But I don't know. We'll see.
One point Kay did make that I think perhaps leans your direction is he was like, they don't have luxury boxes in Cameron Indoor. It's not like I can just like sit in a suite away from, the masses. And that
being said, he can literally sit in any seat he wants to, including Shires. So that's true, but there is no seat he can't sit in that he wants to sit in.
Well, John Wooden for years had a seat inside Pauley Pavilion, and it was like it wasn't on the front row. It was like
8th row or something.
It was like something I can picture it right now, where the second greatest coach in UCLA history used to sit after he retired. And you just look over there, and it's just like, oh, there's Coach Wooden sitting there, and he had his own little parking spot right at the parking garage. I remember one time I was out in LA going to UCLA game, and it was announced because they would announce it. Like Coach Wooden is not expected to attend tonight's game for, health reasons, or he's just, he's getting caught up on a Netflix series, whatever he was up to. That was
actually ever a reason, but yeah.
No, I think one time he missed.
I'm going to have to fact check you. I believe, unfortunately, the great John Wooden passed before Netflix streaming was actually an available option.
I don't think that's true.
He might have been doing Netflix by mail. That is possible. That timeline might shake out.
Yeah, it was like, if I remember correctly, home game against Arizona, and UCLA announced he was going to miss the game because he was trying to wrap up season 1 of House of Cards.
Okay.
That's a true story. So I remember they announced one time John Wooden wasn't going to be there for one reason or another, and then I pulled in the parking garage, and his parking spot was right there. It said reserved for Coach Wooden, and I was like, should I just take it? I know he's not coming. And then I thought better of it. I didn't feel like thought better of it.
You find yourself covering a UCLA home game in the next few years, you won't think about that with Cronin. You'll know better instantly.
I know.
Although, gotta be honest, if anyone can pull it off, it's you.
I could just get out and wave to the parking attendant
in that space and get out, and people, oh, that's Mick. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I just get out.
Actually.
Just get out. I should try to coach UCLA. Yeah. Just try to coach them one game. Just show up.
I'd love to see it. Let's have you coach a game for UCLA and get Cronin on here. Imagine Mick Cronin's turning off the podcast. Where are we going? This is an ACC preview. Okay. Shire takes over. That's the biggest storyline. Number 2
We'll start over since we're not live. We can just start over.
No. We're not starting over. No. We won't do it live. Here we go. UNC trying to win it all after making the title game. Obviously, easily the favorite. There weren't like heavy expectations for Hubert in year one, and yet the Boobers were still out by December. How does this group handle all that pressure? Everything with UNC. Obviously, we're going to get to our projections in the standings, so we'll touch on Duke and UNC a little bit more, but also a reminder to Duke and UNC fans listening to this podcast. Plenty of you already realize this. We did standalone episodes dedicated solely to those teams as our summer shoot-around series. If you have not listened or watched those, please go find them. We do deep dives on those teams. Number 3, I'll say Nigel Pack, NIL situation at Miami. No player, how about this, GP? No player has a dollar figure tied to their college career for now the way Pack does when he signed the 2-year, $800,000 deal, $400,000 a year. We don't know how. We know that Timmy and Oscar Shibwe and Hunter Dickinson, we know that they are making a lot and will be making more than that. But even despite that, like that makes more sense because it's more merit-based. Pack was a good player on a terrible team that got famous for being the first poster child of pay for play in essence in college basketball. So I actually think his story in Miami is a pretty big one. 2 more. Virginia, dark horse title champ here in the ACC. Keep an eye. Tony Bennett doesn't stay down for too long after being off the radar for a year plus. Does Virginia push and pack its way back into the national conversation? And then I got to be honest, this is my storyline number 5, another summer shoot-around series we did. It kind of feels like the ACC might be low on storylines, which then again is a storyline to itself. But my 5th one is Kenny Payne in the Ville. Expectations, yes, they're low. DJ Wagner hopes are now fading after he signed an NIL deal with Nike earlier this week. Louisville, of course, an Adidas school. But how does Kenny Payne and Louisville look in year one? So those are my 5 biggest storylines heading into the ACC season.
Well, the DJ Wagner thing is interesting because I don't want to say it's over, but like when you sign an NIL deal with Nike, you're not going to an Adidas school.
Kentucky is recruiting you. That's the thing.
I mean, you're not going to an Adidas school if you sign an NIL deal with Nike. I'll keep it that simple. You're not going to Adidas school if you sign an NIL deal with Nike. And so I'm assuming at this point, DJ Wagner is going to be a Kentucky Wildcat. And if you combine that development with a really bad first season in Louisville, I don't know that this is fair, but people will start to ask Kenny Payne questions pretty quickly, won't they?
Yeah, I mean, he is a beloved figure at that school, obviously, as an alum. And he will have, he will have slack as he does deserve it. There's still an IARP case, by the way, that's coming down the pike and should be next. And I think it actually is going to land in the middle of the season. So it's actually going to be could be bumpy and noisy. We'll see what,
because like
all of that stuff.
I'm not a recruiting analyst, but I don't think recruiting's going that well.
Yeah. Which is somewhat understandable when you consider all the circumstances there. But the Wagner stuff is where, Louisville was hoping, this is the recruit. Can we beat out Kentucky for this guy who might, be the best freshman in America when he gets into college basketball? And then that news, that's certainly a punch to the gut.
I can't wait till Nigel Pack post game. It's like, and let's sit it down to Holly Rowe with Nigel Pack. Nigel, 18 points, 6 assists, and a 16-point victory over Clemson. You really were knocking down shots early. He's like, I just like to thank Life Wallet, and my teammates,
John Ruiz,
for making this possible. Like, will Nigel Pack shout out Life Wallet in a post-game interview?
It should probably be part of his deal, to be honest with you. If he ever gets a post-game interview on national television with the likes,
he's going to be like a NASCAR driver. NASCAR drivers are like, I just like to thank my sponsors, Miller Lite. Nigel Pack's going to be like, I'd like to think why wouldn't that become a thing in college basketball where you start thanking your advertisers?
Wouldn't bother me. We'll get to Miami and where that shakes out. I'm actually interested to see where GP has them in his overall hierarchy. Oh, by the way, if you're listening, GP wrote our ACC preview on CBSSports.com. You can also read that on the CBS Sports app.
I guess.
Okay. Giving a push for your work, my man.
I appreciate it. How many ACC programs going to make the NCAA tournament? I'll ask Deadleg that question next. But first, a word from our partners,
The UEFA Champions League on Paramount Plus. 9 months of heart-stopping, hold-your-breath exhilaration.
That's brilliant!
With more magic and more drama. While a former Bavarian nails the back of the net in Barcelona, an American trades his stars with zebra stripes, and a Norwegian creates sky blue spectacles.
Oh,
so stream every sweat-soaked second of regulation time, stoppage time, and extra time.
beyond magnificent!
This is the best of the best of the best. This is the UEFA Champions League. Stream every match live, exclusively on Paramount Plus.
I'd like to thank Paramount Plus for making this possible.
Absolutely.
5 schools ACC got in the NCAA tournament last season. Trivia time. Can you name all 5?
All right. Duke, Carolina, Miami, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech.
It was very good. That's exactly what it was. But only 5. Right now, Jerry Palm has 7 ACC teams projected to make the 2023 NCAA tournament. It is those same 5: North Carolina, Duke, Miami, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, plus 2 more.
I'm going to go based off of my standings. So I will say he has Virginia.
That's right.
And then I'm going to say, according to my projection, I'll say he has Florida State.
That's right. It's North Carolina as a 1 seed, Duke as a 3, Virginia as a 7, Miami as an 8, Virginia Tech as an 8, Florida State as an 11, Notre Dame as an 11. So the conference moving back in the right direction. But do you realize the ACC finished at KenPom 5th in conferences last season for the 2nd straight year? Didn't finish lower than 4th in any of the previous 7 seasons. And now it's been 5th in 2 straight seasons, with Duke, Louisville, Notre Dame, Miami all missing the NCAA tournament in 2021. And then Virginia, Florida State, Syracuse, Louisville all missing the NCAA tournament in 2022. Like Louisville, Virginia, Syracuse have all won national titles in the past 20 years. Them not being good recently has been a real drag on the league. It's not as simple as that, but if somebody were to stop you on the street and ask you, so why has the ACC been down? Because Louisville's been down, because Syracuse has been down, because Virginia has at least been down relative to what Virginia was each of the past 2 seasons.
5th is a problem. I don't know if it'll be, at least for the ACC, which is obviously a traditional basketball first conference there. Would be shocked if this was a top 2 conference in the country. That hasn't happened since 17-18 per KenPom. I think it could be anywhere from 3 to 5. I don't think it'll be as low as 6, but I will go, if I set the over-under at 6.5 NCAA tournament bids, I'm going to go under in 23 for the ACC. Would you go under or over 6.5? Would you side with Palm or fade that a little bit?
I would side with Palm. It's Jerry Palm, for crying out loud. How would I go against him?
Give me, do you have your 1 through 7 in order? Standings, projections, what you think?
It would be North Carolina, Duke, Virginia.
Yep.
I don't go any further than that. The top 25 and 1. I could see what I sent in.
Yes. Why don't you pull up what you sent in, and I'll give you my 1 through 7 while he looks it up. I go UNC, Duke, Virginia, draw a line. I go Notre Dame 4. I'll go Miami 5, Florida State 6, Virginia Tech 7. I think those are all viable contenders, and then I'll get to the back half in a little bit here. But Virginia has to be a clear 3. Reese Beekman, Jaden Gardner, Kihei Clark, Caden Shedrick, Armand Franklin all back. They get Ben Vanderplas in from Ohio. That's a 1 through 6 that I believe will have Virginia wearing home whites until at least the Sweet 16, provided UVA can win a couple of games in the NCAAs. Virginia lost no one of note. So if Beekman can jump to an all ACC first team level kind of guy, Kihei Clark kind of is what he is at this stage of his career, and that is a good thing. Specifically, like for Virginia, he fits his role in Bennett's system and will be vital this season. I'm not even convinced I'd have Virginia 3rd in this tier if Kihei Clark wasn't on the roster. I think he's that important to the actual overall team there. Shedrick should be a bit of more of a breakout on the defensive end. Jaden Gardner was a stat monster at ECU. Maybe he grows a little bit more. So to me, it's like Duke and Carolina and Virginia all in the same group. If you wanted to separate Carolina from Duke and Virginia, I'd actually buy that there. So UNC, Duke, UVA, Notre Dame, Miami, Florida State, Virginia Tech's my 1 through 7. What would you go 1 through 7, GP?
We got the same 7, just slightly different order. North Carolina, Duke, Virginia 3, Miami 4, Notre Dame 5, Florida State 6, Virginia Tech 7.
Okay, so we've got Notre Dame and Miami flipped. Why you go Miami 4 instead of Notre Dame there?
Life wallet.
Okay. Aside from the obvious with Life Wallet, they lost Cam Auguste. They lost Charlie Moore, Sam Wardenberg. Those guys combined for well over 30 points. So they depart, which made me pause just a little bit there.
But you bring back Isaiah Wong and you add Nigel Pack. That's pretty good. Now, they're not very big. That could be a problem in a league with Armando Bacot and Derek Lively. But, I like the guards. And Larinaga's great. They lose Chris Caputo, too.
They do. New head coach at George Washington. Yes.
And I don't think that type of thing impacts this team. But you do wonder because Caputo is, a hustler, like, a recruiter. Does that have an impact on Miami's program going forward?
I think there's a chance. I mean, this is like we're way inside the sport here, but Caputo is a long time assistant for Larinaga, was part of the George Mason Final Four team and all that good stuff. And he had a significant impact on the success of that program right there alongside Larinaga. So that's something to keep in mind there. Isaiah Wong is back, by the way, just a reminder.
After threatening to go into the transfer portal.
And it really is an indication of like how long the college basketball offseason was. GP, that was like the second or third week of the offseason. He tried to publicly leverage his NIL situation. How successfully that actually was, I guess, is up for debate. But, Nigel Pack actually is the one who induced Wong's ploy. And then John Ruiz, Miami's Rich Booster behind all this stuff, said he signed the NIL deal. I don't renegotiate. And then apparently I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was why. Yeah. Can you imagine 30 years ago? It'd be like, yeah, so this Miami booster went out and bought a Kansas State player. And then Miami's leading returning scorer was like, hold up, that guy got more money than me. I'm going to go public. If I don't get at least that much money, I will enter the transfer portal. We'd be like, what sport are you talking about again?
I'm by the way,
I love it.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Give me stuff to talk about. Give me interesting things and wrinkles and players making noise there. Another name to know is Norchad Omier, who was an Arkansas State transfer, a top 2 player in the Sun Belt. He is a key name to know and will be expected to be one of those up transfers that really can make an immediate impact. I think Miami's going to make the tournament. They're coming off that stunning Elite 8 run. The team doesn't appear to be deep, which is why I put them at 5 and I put Notre Dame at 4. And I also think this is kind of state of the ACC. Like I look at a team like Miami and I'm like, this is my number 5 team. It's your number 4 team. I get skeptical the league will be any deeper than 6. Real quick on Notre Dame, since we've got them 4-5. I get the sense Mike Bray knows he's got his best team in at least a half decade. I think it's definitely a deeper team than Miami, even slightly. Maybe Bray winds up tightening up the roster, as so many coaches do by the start of February. But I like this starting 5: Nate Laszewski, Dane Goodwin, Cormac Ryan, Marcus Hammond, JJ Starling. JJ Starling is another good freshman coming in.
Yeah, 5-star player.
5-star player. They just lost Blake Wesley, a top 25 pick, and it's Bray has managed to live up to his mantra, which is get old, stay old. He's done that again while losing a first-round NBA pick that was a one-and-doner, and now having another 5-star guy coming in. I mentioned Hammond. He was an 18-point-a-game guy at Niagara, so we'll see. But Laszewski's a vet who's gotten better. Goodwin is a veteran wing. I think he's one of 6 super seniors on the roster there. So I will lean. I feel like there's slightly more reliability with Notre Dame, but having said that, I still think there's a gap between Virginia at 3, and we got Notre Dame and Miami 4-5, however you want to shake it out before we get to the bubble teams there.
Yeah, Notre Dame went 15-5 in the ACC last season, and they bring back 3 of the top 5 scorers and add a 5-star guard to that. Like that's pretty good. And so, I think Mike's going to go to back-to-back NCAA tournaments here. The interesting one is Florida State for me. And we're going to pop right back up to Duke, North Carolina in just a second, I promise. Yeah. But Florida State, you look at the roster and you go, okay, bring back Cameron Mills. Matthew Cleveland was a 5-star in 2021, back. Jalen Warley was a top 50 guy. He's back. Some real talent, but they were terrible last season. They were 20th in the preseason AP poll. They finished 105th at KenPom, went 17-14. Now, some of this was injury related. Like they played 31 games and Cameron Mills only played 26. Cleveland only played 29. Malik Osborne only played 17. 3 of the top 4 scorers missed at least 5 games last season. So perhaps that's the best explanation. They were just never healthy. But if you've got Florida State in the top 25 preseason, and some people do, and I thought about it, you are asking a bunch of guys who lost a lot last season to now win a lot. And I'm not saying they can't do it. I mean, I've got Florida State projected as an NCAA tournament team, but that's not a normal thing in college basketball. I guess you're still believing in the talent and just trusting Leonard Hamilton, Stan Jones, the talent, and if it's healthy, they'll be good. I guess that's where you're at. But you're asking a bunch of guys that lost a bunch to win a lot. And again, that's not a normal thing in college basketball.
Cleveland could be an NBA player. They've got this 6'11" Spanish freshman, Baba Miller, who will compete with 7'4" Naheem McLeod for minutes in the middle. They've got a guy named Jalen Gainey who transferred from Brown. Could be a classic 10-point a game Florida State Seminole, like so many.
Everybody averages somewhere between 8 and 11 points at Florida
State. I'm leaning with Hamilton there. And then real quick on Virginia Tech before we scoot up to the favorites there. Storm Murphy, Keve Aluma, Naheem Alima are all gone. Justin Mutz is back. That's big. Hunter Couture is back. Sean Padula are back. And then they've got Grant Basile, who was a do-it-all stretch big from Wright State. Again, we've got a lot of these transfers at the power conference level this season that put up big numbers at a mid-major, and some of them will hit and some of them won't. I don't know if Basile will or will not, but he does add another dimension. I actually do like what he does for Mike Young's system. Virginia Tech for me is in the 4 to 8 range in the ACC. I'd be surprised if they were 3rd or better, and I'd be really surprised if they were 9th or worst. To me, they're sitting right there, flirting with getting in the tournament or maybe being a 1, 2, 3 seed in the NIT. And I also wonder, the state of the program there. Will it be a flash in the pan last season? They got real hot at the end. They played well. They ended Carolina's run in the ACC tournament. I was right there to watch Mike Young pull it off, and they had a great run. But can it find some sustainability in the upper half of this league this season, next season, season after? Because Mike Young runs some different stuff from a lot of other coaches in the league. So we do have the same 7, just in a slightly different order. We are in agreement that Carolina's 1 and then Duke is 2. Vamp away on them as you please. I will just say that going in, to reiterate what I almost certain mentioned on the Duke shoot-around series episode, they've got a lot of talent, and there's a lot of interesting stuff that's going to emanate from there, and I can't wait to watch Duke play. The talent's absurd. I'm just going to cautiously fade them big picture. Like, I'm not going to have Duke in my preseason top 10 rankings. I will need to see it. It's Shire's first season as a head coach. There's so many new pieces. Jeremy Roach is a key piece back. I think he's the lone captain. I think I saw Duke recently announced there. So to me, there's actually I think Duke is closer to Virginia than Duke is close to North Carolina heading into this season.
I don't love how young they are, but they are super talented. I mean, 3 of the top 4 prospects in the class of 2022 are enrolled at Duke right now. And that's for people who maybe don't follow it. It's Derek Lively, Dariq Whitehead, and Kyle Filipowski. Dariq Whitehead, off-season / preseason injury.
Yeah. So
his availability, when he'll be ready, is unclear. Second straight year, Duke's dealing with this with a 5-star guy. A preseason injury that lingers into the regular season. Bring back Jeremy Roach. I like that. Get Jacob Grandison, transfer from Illinois, who started for the Illini and shot 41% from 3. So you've got a guy who can create some space for these bigs, but they're really young. And with a first-year head coach, I'm high on him. I've got him 5 in the top 25 and 1. But if you were to ask me, which preseason top 5 team are you most worried about being wrong on, it would have to be Duke. And I want to be clear, it's not because K's gone, Shire's in. It's just because they're going to be relying on a lot of 18-year-olds in a sport where people are trying to get old, and in a league where the favorite is really old.
That's right. And remember, if you want all the Duke content you could ever ask for, well, some of it, that's in our summer shoot-around series. As for Carolina, I haven't fully decided on the number 1 team. I'm like kind of debating internally right now. But
What
Carolina,
are the options for you? North Carolina, Gonzaga, Houston. Do you consider anybody else? Kentucky?
yes, those are the 4. I'm also considering Kentucky. I was actually literally last night looking through it. Those are the 4 that I'm trying to debate between because I don't know, just trying to come to the team that I think has the best chance at being the best team for the majority of the season and win the title there. So Carolina, they replace Brady Manick with Pete Nance, which is obviously huge. And yeah, I do want to see how they handle the pressure. I do want to see if Caleb Love, like with Armando Bacot, rightfully so, is going to be considered the preseason player of the year. That's what, when that gets announced at ACC Media Day, Armando Bacot's going to be that guy. I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility that Caleb Love actually wants to be UNC's best player there. And I will even go and circle back to what I said previously on the UNC Summer Shoot-Around episode. I've seen RJ Davis be Carolina's most important player by far for like 6, 7, 8-minute stretches in games. So there could be nights when it's him as well there. Puff Johnson, he'll have an increased role. There's a lot to like about this Carolina team. I just want to see how this veteran group returning handles the amount of expectation and pressure on them. It's going to be a big jump from a season ago, and they did not get off to the most inspiring of starts last November and December, but they have to objectively be picked first heading into the season.
The Caleb Love thing's interesting because where Carolina flipped it last season, at least was in part connected to moving him off the ball and playing with a primary point guard and letting Caleb Love just, hey, go score. And they started winning and they made it all the way to the title game. And so nobody had a problem with him taking 24 shots or 20 shots. But he was taking 24 shots. He took 24 shots in the title game. He took 20 in the Final Four. He took 17 in the Elite Eight. He took 24 in the Sweet 16. And though he was fairly efficient against UCLA, he was 5 of 24 against Kansas. And so when you're looking at teams like this, I think if you start trying to identify possible problems, it's like you've got the preseason ACC Player of the Year on your roster in Bacot, and you got another guy who might want to shoot 24 shots and might miss 19 of them. And like, does that create a dynamic there that can, I think they're going to be good. I think this is one of those teams that if they play to their potential, they could be the best team in the country. If they underachieve, still a top 20 team. I think they're going to be a top 20 team no matter what. But if they're closer to 20, if we look up in February and they're closer to 20 than they are 1, I bet you it's obviously injury stuff, or it's some sort of they can't quite figure out how they want to play. Do you want to play through the ACC Player of the Year, or do you want Caleb Love taking 24 shots?
Yeah, or you just hope that Armando Bacot, who went 6 double-doubles in a row in the tournament, can clean up some of that mess. And
maybe that's evidence. Maybe that's evidence that both things can be like Caleb Love can take 20 shots, and Armando Bacot can still be a first-team All-American. Maybe both those things can exist at the same time. And
there's also the potential for, I'm going to mention him right here, of course, our guy Lockdown Leaky here, top 10 defender in the country. His stat line from last season was 4.9 points, 4.8 rebounds, 2.7 assists.
You can't measure Leaky Black with a box score.
You truly no, but you legitimately cannot. But those numbers will improve, and he really could be the piece that kind of keeps them all together. All right, back end of the ACC here, GP. I've got. Well, how about you? You saw your you checked in on your list. So why don't you roll us through 8 through 15? What do you got there?
Well, at 8, I've got Wake Forest, 9 Syracuse, 10 NC State, 11 Clemson, 12 Pitt, 13 Boston College, 14 Louisville, and 15 Georgia Tech. Out of all of that, Wake just loses so much. They lose Alondas Williams, Jake LaRavia, and those guys combined to average 33 points a game last season. 33 points, 13 rebounds, 9 assists per game. Like, that's a lot to lose.
And yet you put them 8. We don't have one team in the same spot in the back end, by the way. 8 through 15, we don't have one team. I think
you can shuffle a lot of these.
Where do you have? What did you say you had Q's?
At 9.
That's the only one. I have Q's at 9.
And that's going to be an interesting thing this season. Like Jim's 77 years old. Jim Boeheim. He'll turn 78 next month.
Yeah.
And though he has had some nice NCAA tournament runs in recent years, Syracuse hasn't finished better than tied for 6th in the ACC in the past 8 seasons. Syracuse's ACC record the past 5 seasons, 46-46. Buddy's gone. Jimmy's gone. Like I somebody tweeted that they asked Jim Boeheim recently about retirement, and he said it's getting close, but that program is not operating for a pretty significant amount of time consistently at the level at which it operated for much of my life and much of Jim's career. And I imagine that must I wonder where Syracuse fans are with all this. Like, love, appreciate Jim Boeheim for everything he's been to that school. But again, these are facts. Hadn't finished better than tied for 6th in the ACC in any of the past 8 seasons, and is playing .500 basketball in the ACC over the past 5 years. That's not – Syracuse is a big national brand, and those aren't stats connected that should be connected to big-time national brands.
Here's another fact for you. Syracuse is coming off the first losing season of Jim Boeheim's career. He had never finished sub 500 ever at Syracuse until this past season there. So history would suggest that pattern's not going to repeat itself, but he's also 77 going on 78. There's a freshman, Judah Mintz, who'll have the ball in his hands, a lead guard there, might split time, run the offense with Joe Girard. Girard's kind of better off the ball. And then they got a good big combo of Jesse Edwards and Benny Williams. I put him at 9. I don't know. I've got NC State at 8. These coaching regimes, GP, sometimes move with the blur. Kevin Keatts is already in year 6 in Raleigh. That's kind of mind-blowing to me that this is already his 6th season there. NC State's going to benefit from the fact that it got Terquavion Smith back, and he would have been an NBA pick had he decided to leave. He did not. He came back. Now, had Darion Sebron returned to NC State, then I think you've got like a top 6 situation there. Sebron's not there. He's gone. They've got DJ Burns from Winthrop. He's kind of a sneaky good transfer. This is a team that went 11-21, so me putting them 8 is actually a little bit aggressive. I get that, but to touch on what GP said, man, this is a murky soup of programs right now. I don't know. I think NC State can be a bit of a spoiler. It ranked 11th in turnover percentage nationally last season, which is obviously extremely good. If it can keep that up, then maybe it can be a mover and a shaker. Where do you have the Wolfpack?
I've got NC State at 10. 10.
Okay, I've got Boston College at 10. Biggest stock riders in the ACC. This is a bit of a dart throw, admittedly, but they bring back the Langford brothers, Mekhi Ashton Langford and DeMar Langford. Jaden Zachary's back. 4 starters in total are returning. Someone's going to worm their way up in these standings. I don't know who it's going to be. I just kind of, I guess I kind of just feel this one in my bones. I'm also mildly invested in this in the fact that I've gone to 2 Boston College games in the past 12 years, despite living less than 3 hours from Conti Forum. They're just almost never worth going up and seeing. I don't think they're going to be a tournament team. They might even struggle to be an NIT team, but that's my dart throw. You had Wake at 8. I've got him at 12 behind Clemson. Real quick on these two. Brad Brownell is on the hot seat. My understanding is
he's been on the hot seat for
it is my understanding it's NCAA tournament or bust there. I get that. How about this?
Year 13 for Brad.
He is the winningest and longest tenured coach in Clemson basketball history. Were you aware of that?
I was not.
No one has before. I think the other longest tenured one was like 9 or 10 years. So he's comfortably the longest tenured in the history of the program.
What did our man OP do?
He was there like 6 seasons. It felt like 16, but it was only like 6. Oliver Purnell Parrish. A lot of it falls on the return of 6'10" PJ Hall, who averaged 15.5 points last season before injuring his knee in the offseason there. So I've got Clemson 11. Wake. I mean, they lost Jake LaRavia to the NBA, and Steve Forbes did not think that was going to happen. So they lost him. Alondas Williams became the best player in the ACC. I don't know. Forbes does love projects. This is the 3rd straight season he's got a project, though. I'm going to fade them. I'm going to fade them a little bit. They got Florida transfer Tyree Appleby there. That's 12.
LaRavia is going to mess around and be in the Grizzlies opening night rotation.
Is he? Yeah, I mean, that's not to say he doesn't deserve it, but like, I don't know if there's a more surprising player in that regard. I mean, Jalen Williams from Santa Clara went from WCC like top 5 to 10 player to literally being a lottery pick. So I guess Jalen Williams is more, but LaRavia came from Indiana State, wasn't even the best player on his own team, on a team that didn't make the tournament, and now you're saying he's going to get real NBA. I mean, great for him. That's an awesome story. But no doubt, Forbes thought that he'd have LaRavia, and if he did, I would have Wake higher than 12. I just have him 12.
And those are the ones that kill you.
Yeah.
When you enroll Paulo Banchero, that's a 1-year deal. But yeah, when you enroll Jake LaRavia, you don't think you're losing him. So you're not planning, you're not preparing to lose him. I remember a few years ago at Gonzaga, I was talking to Mark Few about this. Like, they lost Brandon Clark. They recruited Brandon Clark, and they were like, okay, he'll be here for a little while. And then he was gone after 1 year. It's like, we knew, I don't want to put words in his mouth.
He came from San Jose State, GP. Like,
right.
Where they were recruiting, it's not like he came from Oregon or he came from Kansas, or Missouri, or even like a Missouri. He came from San Jose State and then turned himself into a top 15 pick.
Yeah, it was like we knew we were going to lose Rui Hachimura or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, we didn't know we were losing Brandon Clark. And what the Gonzaga losing Brandon Clark after 1 year is a lot like Wake losing Jake LaRavia after 1 year. You had no reason to think that was a likely scenario or even a realistic scenario when you enrolled him. And so you weren't prepared to replace him.
My final three is Louisville, Georgia Tech, Pitt. I'll do a quick riff and then wrap it up as you please. We did a summer shoot-around episode on Louisville because we're sickos, so you can go back and listen to everything that you need to basically there. Georgia Tech, I've got back-to-back 14th place finishes here for the Bees. No one on this team that's returning averaged more than 8 points a season ago. This is Pastner's 7th season with Georgia Tech. You talk about time flying. Like, this is his 7th season in Atlanta? What? He's already in year 7? I don't know. The roster is basically monotonous and anonymous at this point. It's one big shoulder shrug for me. And then I've got Pitt last, and I'm not happy about it. Jeff Capel is a good coach. Pitt is a program that is seemingly regretting parting ways with Jamie Dixon more and more as the years go on. This was an automatic in the tournament every year program. I know the Pitt fans listening to this are so sick of this talking point, but I'm sorry, when your program is literally irrelevant in your own conference, let alone nationally, and the last time it wasn't was when your former coach was there, and then there was this unceremonious parting of the ways, and then you look up and, oh, hello, Jamie Dixon's going to have TCU as a top 15, 20 level team, TCU, then yeah, we're going to have to harp on it. Dior Johnson, the team's top ranked freshman, currently suspended from the team after he was charged in the past week on charges of strangulation, false imprisonment, aggravated assault, and unlawful restraint. We don't even know if he will play, and his current situation is way bigger than basketball anyway. According to a local report, Johnson is accused of assaulting a woman per police on September 5th and in the morning of September 6th in an apartment. Terrible situation there. And Pittsburgh hasn't commented much more on that. Pitt's just a hodgepodge of transfers, new faces. I don't know if Capel will stick around another season if Pitt can't finish, say, above 11th in the ACC. That already feels like fait accompli. So I begrudgingly put this team last, but frankly, Wake, Louisville, Georgia Tech, and Pitt are the four that I have kind of in the running to be at the bottom of the cellar.
The Dior Johnson thing is really ugly. From the incident report, you hear the charges and it's like, okay, that doesn't sound good, but like, what allegedly happened? And it's like, allegedly slapped a woman after she got his phone wet, then took her phone, left at midnight, and then returned 4 hours later. They start fighting again. Verbal argument escalates, and he allegedly repeatedly punched her in her arm, stomach, and head, causing her to throw up twice. If any of that's true, he's not playing at Pitt, nor should he. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
And so that makes year 5 for Jeff even more difficult than it was already going to be. This is one where I thought it would work. And I thought
it would work. I didn't think that like he's going to have Pitt like going to Sweet 16s 2 out of 3 years. I just thought it would work, and it hasn't.
Right, and it just hasn't worked. I mean, we both like Jeff and got a lot of respect for him, but it hasn't gone well. 14th, 13th, 12th, 11th. Those are the 4 finishes in the ACC standings. It reminds me a little bit, not quite apples to apples, but Ben Howland at Mississippi State. Like, I thought Ben Howland it's Ben Howland. Like, I thought he went anywhere. And he never really got it off the ground. And, Jeff had won at Oklahoma. He did. He won at Oklahoma. And then, he recruited like crazy at Duke. And I just assumed he would be able to, and it's not like Pitt is a place where nobody's won. Ben won there. Jamie won there. I thought that would work. I'm surprised that it hasn't.
All right, let's wrap up with our predictions on player of the year, freshman of the year, coach of the year. Who you got?
Player of the year, Armando Bacot,
Same.
North Carolina. Freshman of the year, Derek Lively at Duke. You just got to pick one of the Duke guys, and he's the highest ranked of the recruiting class. And then coach of the year, do we do coach of the year?
Yeah, we do.
This one's tough.
I'm interested to hear who you got.
I went John Shire. Just because if I think Duke lives up to expectations, the coach of the year should be a guy who's in his first year replacing a legend who secured the #1 recruiting class in America and then won with it. That's coach of the year stuff. So I'm betting on Duke to be good. And if Duke's good, I think John Shire should be coach of the year.
Armando Bacot could be the national player of the year. So obviously he has to be player of the year pick here in the ACC. But again, maybe Caleb Love, we're talking about him in the middle of December and he's just putting up insane numbers. And it's like, who knows? But Bacot's the pick. I also have Lively as the freshman of the year. Yeah, you pretty much got to go with one of the Duke guys. And because of how good Lively is defensively, his two-way capability, I'm going to lean on him. But Duke has like 3 guys between Filipowski, Whitehead, if he's healthy, and Lively. That'll all be in that conversation. And I went with Hubert Davis for coach of the year.
That's fine.
Only because, and kind of leaning on your philosophy with this one, the amount of pressure on Carolina, and if he were to, and like I'm going to predict Carolina to finish first. If he does that, and he can maintain that high level, then I would give it to him. But I tell you what, if UNC and Duke finish tied for first at the end of the year in the league standings, I would give it to Shire. First-year coach, freshman, a tougher situation to inherit, I think. In that situation, I would give it to Shire. But what I'm going to put on the table here is that Carolina wins the ACC by at least 3 games. So I'm going to take Hubert to win coach of the year.
That's fine. Like if Hubert takes North Carolina to a 1 seed, I won't hold him to like be #1 in the country, but like get a 1 seed, ACC champs. Unless Duke's right there with them, then yes, I'm going to reward the guy who obviously closed strong last season and then brought most of those guys back and did it again. It's not easy to just bring a bunch of guys back and be what you're supposed to be. UCLA got talked about a lot last season. Like UCLA was good last season, but UCLA was not as great as what the preseason numbers would have suggested. And so like this will be challenging for Hubert, but boy, he's got a lot of nice pieces to start with. And I suspect they'll be really good. And if they are, then he should be acknowledged accordingly. We getting out of here? Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. 5 stars, nice review over at Apple. Type some words. There's more of us than there are of them. It needs to be reflected in the comments. So you go knock that out. If you're still here on YouTube, smash the like button like you're Brandon Davies, and we will talk to you again real soon. Next up, conference previews, the Big East. Bye-bye.